First, I must ask you about the news that the 4 hostages have been rescued. Your reaction to that?
Well, it's great news, and it must be wonderful for those families. And yeah, I thought with them. I mean, I think it is clearly incumbent on Israel to make sure they act proportionately, but also it is deeply cynical when Hamas embed these hostages right in the middle of civilian populations. So very difficult circumstances. We all urge both sides to get together and try and strike this ceasefire deal.
And of course, the civilian death toll in Gaza continues. Your reaction to that today, because it seems like that number is rising and rising.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to see Israel do more to prevent civilian casualties. But as I say, it's very, very difficult when Hamas cynically embed these hostages amidst civilian populations. So it's very, very difficult. I understand the need from Israel's perspective to release those hostages, and it's great that they have done that today. But it's very difficult to do that without endangering civilian populations in Gaza, and that's due to, let's say, Hamas's actions and decisions where to put those hostages.
Let's talk about British politics now. And I hope you don't take this too personally, but it does. We obviously love having you on the show, but it does feel like some of the kind of biggest hitters from the last 5 years, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Sajid Javid, it feels like everyone's kind of abandoned the field. Do you think that's a fair point?
Well, I'm not offended at all. And I'm very keen to be on always on your show. And we've got some fantastic people, and, you know, this comes to everybody. Time in politics comes to an end, and they've got their own decisions to make and other things to do with their lives. But I think the 70 odd of us have decided not to stand again. I'm standing again, delighted to do so, and the vast majority of my colleagues think exactly the same. And we're right behind Rishi Sunak, and we think he'd be the best person to lead this country. And he's demonstrated fantastic leadership over the last 18 months, and we want that to continue.
Why do so many of your colleagues not think that, though? Why are so many MPs standing down, do you think?
Well, as I say, people have different things. Politics isn't the only thing you can do with your life. And Michael Gove, for example, I think he's been in politics for 20-odd years, and many other people who have stepped down have served their time too. So everybody, for all political careers, end, of course. And but there are some fantastic people coming through, and we've got a fantastic leader in Rishi Sunak, and I support him. I think he is the right person to lead this country. I think he's led us through a difficult time. 18 months ago, you see where this country was. 11% inflation, 11.1%. The country facing a deep recession. Both those things have been turned around. And that's because of the straightforward, clear leadership we've seen from Rishi Sunak. He's demonstrated his ability to get things done in the previous context in terms of the COVID crisis, cost of living crisis, where he helped businesses and households through those difficult times. He's very clear thinking. He's got a clear plan. The alternative is not clear, very unclear, in fact, and most of Keir Starmer's plans never see the light of day, and when they do, they don't last very long in the harsh light of scrutiny.
You talk about clear leadership. He's come under a huge amount of criticism for not showing leadership by missing the end of the D-Day anniversary. Your colleague Penny Mordaunt said it was very wrong. Do you agree with her?
He made a mistake, and he was, of course, in the UK commemorations in the UK and in the British commemorations in France. He said it was a misjudgment not to stay there for the international commemoration, and he's apologised for that. I've got to say, in terms of the things that are important to people on the doorstep, I've been out all day in Filey, in my constituency, knocking on doors. Only one person, we must have knocked on probably 1,000 doors today, myself and my volunteers, mentioned D-Day. Most people mentioned what's really important to them, things, local issues, or things like the NHS or immigration. Those are things people are really talking about. But so I think perhaps some politicians and some elements of the media are really trying to just keep this story going, which I think is now probably had its time, and the apology has been made. I think it's time now to talk about other issues.
OK, you talk about politicians and members of the media. There have also been veterans that have been quite critical of what happened. Yeah. But let's move on. I want to ask you about ULEZ. Is the Conservative Party the kind of anti-environment party at the moment?
Not at all. But we want to make sure that things are done that are appropriate, and we want to make sure that the costs of moving towards a decarbonised environment and a cleaner environment are sensible and are proportionate. And I think many people can see these ULEZ zones are disproportionate and hit certain parts of our population very hard, particularly those on lower incomes. So we've made the decision to reverse the Mayor of London's expansion of ULEZ zone. We expanded that, of course, into areas where people didn't even have a vote of which was the right person to be Mayor of London. So we think it's the right thing to do to make sure there are checks and balances, particularly when democracy is involved. So we think it's right that we reverse the decision to extend ULEZ.
OK, Kevin Hollinrake, always good to have you on the show. I hope you come on again. Thank you very much.